Balkrishna Doshi, or B.V. Doshi, was an Indian architect born August 26, 1927, in Pune, India. Doshi's career spanned over 7 decades, consisting of over 100 projects, most of which are public institutions in India, such as libraries, schools, art centers, and affordable housing. Doshi's grandfather owned a furniture workshop, and Doshi initially believed this is what he would take up as a profession as well. However, over time, he became interested in architecture, and in 1947, he began his education at the Sir J.J. School of Architecture in Bombay. In 1950, he traveled to London, where he met Le Corbusier. During his Pritzker Prize ceremony, Doshi said, "My works are an extension of my life, philosophy, and dreams, trying to create a treasury of the architectural spirit. I owe this prestigious prize to my guru, Le Corbusier. His teachings led me to question identity and compelled me to discover new regionally adopted contemporary expressions for sustainable, holistic habitat." This reflected his high regard for the immense impact Le Corbusier had on him. His style became rooted in modernism and the natural surroundings he grew up with in India. Despite the large influence of Le Corbusier's style, Doshi would develop a style more heavily based in cultural context, subverting ideas of autonomy within modernist design. Denny Mata explains, Doshi's architecture explores the relationships between the fundamental needs of human life, connectivity to self and culture, and respect of social traditions, with a response that is grounded in context and exhibiting a localized modernist approach. Throughout his career, Doshi was able to expand from the modernism he learned from and bring a postmodern approach to architecture back to India. He valued using his culture and environment in India to shape his buildings rather than a top-down elitist approach often found in modernism. His return to India was largely inspired by his desire to bring back his expertise in order to improve the educational opportunities and bring practices to the country which he learned in France and England. In the early 1960s, Doshi worked under Louis Kahn to establish the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. The structures resemble of the Mill Owners Association building, a project he worked on with Le Corbusier, also in Ahmedabad. Although this building possesses architectural importance, the project is valued because of the establishment which it represents. Later on, in 1966, Doshi founded the School of Architecture, Ahmedabad. This school later joined the 4 other colleges in order to create the Center for Environment Planning and Technology. The 5 facilities which make up the institute are architecture, planning, technology, design, and management. The pedagogy is similar to that of Syracuse University, where our values exist in studio teaching, travel and documentation, and professional office interning. The goals of the school relate to making habitats livable. Inspiration comes from Doshi's exposure and desire to uplift his home country.
In 1963, soon after he permanently moved back to India, Doshi would construct his own dwelling named the Kamala House for his wife. The structure of the building is highlighted by 4 columns and a staircase. With simple form and contrast of color, he was successfully able to maximize interior space while saving construction material. In terms of modernism, the 4 columns efficiently split the whole cube into different parts in the house, where the roof garden, free facade, and ribbon window emerge. He uses India's local bricks as the basic material, which minimizes material transportation costs and construction costs. This kind of brick also helps with climate control. The design itself is heavily influenced by both Western and Eastern architecture, using elements of the site and cultural landscape of India to inspire his use of materials. Doshi relies on a resource-efficient and sustainable strategy. As hollow walls capture and reduce heat, natural light is trapped and maximized through the space. The garden was purposely positioned toward the back of the house rather than the front, in contrast to customary Indian residences of the time to provide seclusion. Kamala House exhibits many of the patterns and styles that would shape Doshi's career in India. 2 of Doshi's most well-known low-cost housing developments were Life Insurance Corporation Housing, which finished construction in 1976, and the Aryan low-cost housing in Indalore, built in 1989. Both projects were slightly different in approach. Both aimed to center the needs of the residences over anything else. Both projects allowed for occupants to participate in construction and allowed for adaptation to accommodate residents' changing needs. Fundamental to the design process of both was the recognition of the relationships between humans and the environment. He prioritizes making the development as livable as possible while staying within budget. Doshi, while maintaining a firm grasp of functionalism, said that ultimately they are not houses but homes where a happy community lives. That is what finally matters. The emphasis not on the purity of the form but rather the experience of the individual within the building is fundamentally different between Doshi and Le Corbusier. There's a strong sense of irony in modernist techniques of designing homes as a machine for living and reinserting the importance of the individual's perception and experience. Doshi could be called a postmodernist in this sense. Studying with Le Corbusier further allowed Doshi to expand his interest in affordable housing. One of Doshi's latest projects, Udyan, the Condoville in Kolkata, India, was accomplished in June of 2022 and reflected Doshi's commitment to designing for the working class. Doshi's design approach for the Udyan, the Condoville, is to promote affordable social housing. Udyan, the Condoville, was set over 25 acres in southeast Kolkata along the Eastern Metropolitan Bypass. This project includes 1,600 residential homes surrounded by green vegetation. It was important to Doshi that every household is provided with adequate opportunity to connect with nature and the community. Udyan also contains different types of facilities for the residents, such as commercial centers, swimming pools, outdoor pavilions, and auditoriums. The grid-like organization of the site plan shows a distinct division between townhouses and tall residential buildings. Most importantly, Udyan is affordable for the working class. By and large, the critiques of B.B. Doshi came from the top-down planners and people more primarily focused on aesthetic ends rather than functional ones. When he first introduced modernism to India, he faced some controversy, but as the country's economy opened up, his work became critiqued and displaced by other architects such as Norman Foster, who contributed to Indian architecture that fit more in the ideals of a universal central business. This urban architecture took away from the personal aspect Doshi valued in his practice. He believed that architecture should be informed not by an aesthetic of affluence, but by empathy. He critiqued the way that some Indian architects are able to detach themselves from the realities of average Indians. In an interview with Indian-American businessman Gautam Bhatia, he said, "If you walk down the street and see people, don't you immediately feel, what can I do for them?" Overall, Doshi built his career off the modernist teachings of Le Corbusier and the surrounding environment from where he worked and lived in India. His impact as an architect in India and around the world is reflected by his practice and the values he showed in his work, helping to spawn a new architecture in India and showing the necessity of connecting building with nature.